The first time I saw the damage, I figured the storm had done all the heavy lifting. Just another Montana spring blowing through at 40 miles an hour, flattening whatever it wanted. 52 acres might not sound like much unless you're the one who has to walk every damn inch of fence line after a hard winter. So there I was, pre-dawn cold stinging my face, breath fogging in the air, staring at the north boundary where my property meets the national forest. And what do I find? Not just a Douglas fir snapped like a matchstick and a 20-foot gap in my fence, but 3 sheep lying in the mud, throats torn open, blood turning the dirt almost black. Wide enough for a truck to drive through, and big, fresh tracks in a wet earth that sure as hell weren't from coyotes. You ever get that gut feeling something's about to spiral? I did. The claw marks were too wide, the tracks pressed so deep you could lay your whole hand in one. I'd seen wolf sign before, worked as a forest ranger before I settled down here for good, but I'd never seen them come this close. Name's Clayton Barrett. I'm 44, third generation on this land, and sometimes it feels like I've spent my whole life patching fences or pulling lambs at midnight. My granddad bought this place back in '47. We run sheep, chickens, a little hay. Enough to keep me busy, not enough to get rich. So I'm kneeling there, fingers pressed into the tracks, rain-soft earth still holding the print. Couldn't have been more than 6 hours old, probably less. This wasn't some lone wolf just passing through. This was a pack that had found easy pickings. I did what I always do, pulled out my phone, took photos of the bodies, the fence, the tracks. Called Montana Wildlife Services, left a message. It wasn't even 6:30 yet, but that's ranch life. No one else is going to do it for you. I grabbed some steel mesh and posts from the barn, threw together a makeshift barrier to keep the rest of the flock in, and nailed up a big plywood sign with red spray paint. Danger, wildlife area, and no trespassing. That sign wasn't for the wolves. It was for the folks down at Riverbend Meadows, that shiny new development 2 miles south. The one with the HOA that likes to send me polite letters asking if I'd like to join the community network. Yeah, that happened. Their HOA was born in 2018. My deed's from '47. Legally, they got no claim on my dirt, and I checked with the county to be sure. Still, that didn't stop them from watching. People park on the access road with binoculars, like my pasture was Yellowstone or something. That morning, sure enough, there's a silver SUV parked 200 yards from my gate, someone in the driver's seat holding up what looked like a camera. I just kept walking. Curiosity ain't a crime, but I made a mental note. First wolves, now watchers. It was going to be a week. Wildlife Services called me back around 10. The guy, Ron, asked about the kills, the tracks, the fence. He told me they'd send someone out within 48 hours, set up wildlife cameras, but until then, I should keep the livestock away from the forest and only use my shotgun, if absolutely necessary. Kill a wolf without a permit and you're the one in trouble. So I moved the flock south, reinforced the chicken coop with extra wire, and try not to think about that silver SUV. But here's the thing about living on land like this: patience. You wait for weather to break, for ewes to lamb, for predators to get bored and move on. But this was different. That night, I poured a whiskey and sat on the porch, listening. Wind had died, sky clear, stars so bright you could almost forget how cold it was. Then I heard it, a long, low howl drifting across the valley. The wolves were still here, and so was I. 3 days later, while I was at the kitchen table sorting feed invoices, my phone buzzed. Email from Lorraine Whitfield, president of the Riverbend Meadows HOA. Community safety concern. The subject read, "The body was all sugar, dear Mr. Barrett. Hope you're well. We've heard reports of dangerous wildlife near your property. In the interest of public safety, we'd like to inspect your ranch, blah, blah, blah." I read it twice, then laughed out loud. They wanted onto my land, all smiles and community concern, but it was a test. See if I caved just because they asked nice. My response: short and sweet. I've contacted the proper state authorities. My land's not within HOA jurisdiction. For your safety, do not approach the fence or enter my property. Thanks, but no thanks. Hit send and waited for the fallout. 2 days of silence. Then, at the feed store, a neighbor I barely knew, Stuart, hands me a printout from the Riverbend Meadows community group. No names, but a photo of a fence that looked a hell of a lot like mine, with a caption about certain landowners putting kids and families at risk. That's how it starts, the soft pressure campaign. Paint me as the crank, the dangerous loner. I knew what Lorraine was after. Control. I called my attorney, Paul, explained the situation, forwarded the emails and the HOA's post. He said what I already suspected. They've got no right, no claim, and if they set foot on your land, it's trespassing. Harass you anymore, go public with lies, and you can hit back with a civil suit. He sent me a cease and desist template. That night, I filled it out, sent it certified with a copy of my deed and the wildlife reports. I wanted proof she'd been warned. Back at the fence that evening, I found more wolf tracks, 4, maybe 5, right up against my makeshift barrier. I sent photos to Ron. He replied, promised they'd be out next day to set up cameras. That night, I installed security cameras at the gate, high, wide angle connected to my phone. The image was sharp. Felt a little paranoid, but after everything, necessary. Next morning, Paul emailed. Lorraine had signed for the letter. He'd also found something else. Riverbend Meadows had petitioned the county to expand their HOA boundary. The whole safety concern routine, just the opening move in a land grab. They wanted more leverage, more control, make life expensive for the holdouts, force us to sell, cash in on development deals. The polite requests were never about safety. They were about power. If they pushed, Paul said, we'd file for a restraining order, maybe even civil damages. Document everything. Don't lose your cool. Let the evidence speak. And that's what I did. Logbook, timestamps, photos, every incident recorded. That's how you fight people like Lorraine. Not with threats, just patience and paper. That night, wildlife camera pinged. Footage of 6 wolves at the fence, big male, testing the mesh. The barrier held. I sent the video to Ron, who told me to keep my distance. And the next week, sure enough, trouble didn't come on 4 legs. I found my gate padlock cut. Hardened steel, snipped clean through with bolt cutters. Camera footage caught the silver SUV, a woman in a hat and sunglasses. Couldn't see her face, but I'd bet the ranch it was Lorraine. She didn't even open the gate, just left the busted lock swinging and drove off. I sent the footage to Paul and the sheriff. Deputy Marsh came out, took my statement, reviewed every piece of evidence. He said this was criminal mischief, not some misunderstanding. I'd have grounds for a restraining order, and if it kept up, maybe criminal charges too. For the first time in months, I felt like the law was actually on my side. But Lorraine wasn't done. The next morning, the county planning department emailed. An anonymous complaint filed against me for improper predator management and environmental hazards. Sounded an awful lot like her first email, only now it was official. Paul shot back with a full packet. Wildlife assessments, dead livestock photos, sheriff's report, everything. He said the county would see it for what it was, retaliation, plain and simple. I'll be honest, I was worn thin, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of waiting for the next shoe to drop. But I wasn't quitting. That evening, I watched the sunset, sipped my coffee, and listened to the wolves. They don't care about boundaries, complaints, or lawsuits. They just follow their instincts. I respected that. Lorraine? She followed a plan, one that needed stopping. And then came the twist. Friday afternoon, call from an unknown number. Older man's voice. Said his name was Franklin Cross. Member of the HOA board. He wanted to meet. Not as the board, but as someone who'd had enough. Neutral ground, diner in town. I said sure, mostly out of curiosity. Franklin was in his 60s, suit a little baggy, eyes tired. He apologized, said Lorraine was wrong, and he'd stayed quiet too long. He confessed the HOA's been twisted into a tool for her personal interests. Turns out, she had a silent partnership with a development company planning to buy up surrounding land for a resort. Problem was, the land wasn't for sale yet. So Lorraine's play was to create enough pressure, fees, complaints, fines, that holdouts like me would cave and sell cheap. He'd seen the emails, the budget projections, even maps with my ranch marked as a priority zone. He kept copies for leverage. I asked if he'd testify. He nodded. He'd seen enough, and Lorraine's threats didn't scare him anymore. I called Paul right there, put him on speaker. Paul verified Franklin's info, started preparing the affidavit. For the first time, I had an ally on the inside. Of course, desperate people do desperate things. That Monday night, motion alert pinged on my phone, silver SUV at the gate, headlights off, Lorraine herself climbing over the fence after failing to break my new lock. I called 911, grabbed my shotgun, and headed out, keeping distance, not looking for a fight, just making sure she didn't get herself killed. She walked deep into the pasture, muttering about exposing my lies, when the wolves appeared, silent, low to the ground, eyes glowing in the beam of her flashlight. 6 of them, including the alpha. Lorraine froze, then bolted. The wolves moved in. I fired a shot into the air. Sound cracked like thunder. Wolves scattered. Lorraine fell, panic-stricken. I dragged her back toward the gate as the sirens wailed closer. Deputy Marsh arrived, took one look, and read Lorraine her rights, arrested for criminal trespass and endangerment. She didn't argue. I pressed charges for everything: the lock, the posts, the campaign of harassment. Court came 3 weeks later. The prosecution rolled out the footage, the wildlife assessments, the cease and desist letters, even Franklin's evidence of Lorraine's financial schemes. The judge saw right through her public safety story, called it what it was: manipulation. Lorraine got 6 months probation, $3,500 in fines, restitution for the lock, and a 5-year restraining order. Franklin became interim president, rewrote the HOA bylaws for transparency, and personally apologized to every landowner on the edge. Civil trial followed. Jury found Lorraine and her developer pals guilty of harassment, defamation, and conspiracy. Awarded me $45,000 in damages and another $30,000 from Summit Ridge Properties. That company folded within months. Lorraine lost her house, her power, and any hope of erasing my boundaries. 6 months after, I stood at my northern fence at sunrise. New steel posts, reinforced mesh, stronger than ever. The wolves had moved deeper into the forest, no longer testing my line. The ranch was quiet, peaceful. I'd hired a part-time hand to help out, giving me space to breathe for the first time in a year. Paul called to say Lorraine had made her last payment, and Summit Ridge was officially dissolved. Even the county commissioner sent a thank you letter for my patience. Funny thing, one afternoon, a young couple from Riverbend Meadows showed up with a homemade pie. They weren't part of the mess, but wanted to say thanks for standing my ground. You made it better for all of us, they said. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the boundary meant something to more than just me. So, here's what I've learned. Boundaries matter. They're more than lines on a map. They're lines in the sand. You let someone cross once, they'll cross again, bring the whole damn parade. But if you hold the line, document everything, trust the law even when it's slow and ugly, you win. Not with force, not with rage, but with patience and truth. If you made it this far, maybe you're fighting your own battle. Maybe you wonder if standing your ground's worth it. It is. Someone out there needs to hear this. You're not alone. The system can work if you work it. And boundaries, well, they're worth defending. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from, or share your own story. Because at the end of the day, the land remembers, and so do the people who fight for it.